So now that we have an idea of how the Unity editor is structured, how we can move around in it, we can dive a little deeper into the engine itself and how we can use it to create games. I talked a little bit about the scene view in the middle here, which is the representation of our game world. Inside the scene view, we right now, when we start a new project, have two objects, the directional light and the main camera. These two objects are game objects. And a game object is basically just anything that is inside our game world or located in the scene view. But so if we look at the game tab here, there's nothing really here. Although there's two game objects in our world, there's nothing in the screen. The game is empty. Why is that? Well, the reason is that game objects are all different. They're basically containers for something called components, and the components are what makes the game object what they are. Some components can make things appear in the game, or in a more technical sense, some components allow for models or images to be rendered into the game, while other components are simply code that executes behind the scenes, which allows the game to function the way it does. So right now we don't have any game objects in our game with a component that allows for itself to be rendered, but we do have two game objects with components that just run behind the scenes to make the game function the way it does. We have the main camera, which has the camera component here, which is basically a bunch of code that just tells Unity this is where in the world you're going to look and this is how you're going to look, or more specifically, this is what you're going to show and this is how you're going to show it to my players. And lights, we'll get into that in the next video because there's a lot to cover there. So if we just create an empty game object to like really understand what these components are, we can add a component to our game object. Right now there's nothing there, you can't even see it if you unclick it in the unselected in the scene view, but if we hover over it you can see, okay, so it is here, but all it has is this transform. The transform is a component that all game objects must have because it tells Unity where in the world are you positioned, how you rotate it, and what scale do I need to put you in. But we can add components to this, and there's components for a lot of different things. Basically what a component is some code that Unity has written that we can just use right off the bat, so we don't have to write all kind of common code that is used in most games, such as physics and rendering 3D objects. But one thing we can do, if we scroll down to the bottom of this list of components, we see this new script option. If we click this one, we can give our new script a name, we can choose a language. I'm only gonna work in C#, but it is also possible to go with JavaScript. If we click create and add, a C# file is added to our assets folder down here on the bottom, and a test script component is added to our game object. So the test is of course just the name of the script, and then it has these brackets script, like it's a different kind of component, but in reality all components are scripts. The standard components are just scripts that are written by Unity per default, and they look a little different because Unity has included some icons for them to be easily recognizable, and also it doesn't have this script here because the script is basically to tell you, okay, this is something custom that you have made or that somebody else has made that you're using. So if we double click the field here where it says test, it should open up our code editor. In my case this is Visual Studio. In your case it's most likely going to be MonoDevelop, which comes with Unity. If we go into edit, preferences, external tools, there's an option called external script editor. Here you can change which editor Unity should use. and you can browse for any C# editor really, or anything really. It'll just open up the program, but you should use a C# editor for making it easier with intelligence and the like. If you don't know how to code, you should be able to follow along a little bit, but I probably won't be explaining very in-depth details about basics of code. But of course, I will explain what the code does and how it works. So if we open up the test script here, we can see three things to begin with. First of all, we are extending something called a mono behavior. And the mono behavior is basically the foundation for all components in Unity. So if you want to make a component, a script that can be attached to a game object and run at game time by the Unity engine, then you're going to have to inherit from or extend the mono behavior. And then we have two standard functions here. There's a start function, which is called once, when the game object is instantiated into the world, either by Unity when you click on the play game button, or by code if you choose to instantiate a game object at a later point. And then there's the update function, which is called once every frame. So normally when you play a game, it's running at like 60 FPS. 60 FPS means 60 frames per second. So basically, when the computer is drawing the game, it's drawing the game 60 times per second. So it's always updating it so it looks smooth. This update function is called once per frame. So basically, it's also going to be called 60 frames per second if Unity is able to keep the frames per second up to that, of course, but it'll just follow, it'll be called once per frame, and you're able to do updates to game objects, either this or basically any game object in your game if you choose to reference it. So if we just go back to Unity here, if you right click in the hierarchy, you get a bunch of different pre-made options, pre-made game objects that has been filled with components that make them do stuff, so you don't have to go and add components by yourself to get these basic effects or basic objects in your game, like a sphere, for example. You don't have to go and add all the objects yourself. There's the mesh filter, mesh renderer. This is used for actually rendering the fact that it's a sphere collider, which is used for collisions in physics, and the material, which we'll also be talking about in a later video. But that is pretty much it, really. All you need to know about GameObjects for now is that they're containers for components. Components are scripts, and scripts are code that we can write or that Unity has already written for us, and that will be executed by the game engine when the game is running. If you like this video, then hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to view more content like this and if you want to get updated whenever a new episode comes out. If you have any questions or feedback, then please leave a comment below. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.